year's 2005.
And something stupid futuristic to a probably stupid
Fly of the movie will lead to the events of this film that
we're gonna watch, which isn't really a film. It's more so of a 10, maybe 12, probably 8-minute YouTube video where we're gonna talk about 5 reptiles, be it more 5 anoles that are, well, pretty cool,
pretty rare, and definitely not in the hobby, would have a pretty good
chance of getting in the hobby if they ever just get that little bit of push.
Now, the first Anole is definitely the least rare on the list and has the most established out of populations, but the reason I want to mention them is that they're like a success story, in a sense. You know, this reptile came from Cuba, right? Cuba does not allow exports, so it really made sure that whatever you did with the species from Cuba, you better do it right, or you may never have the species again, unless you do something illegal. But, you know, pretty simply, you had to make sure you get it right. And the species only had 2 males and 4 females left. And out of those 2.4 of Anolis lutoglaris, if you haven't caught on by what we're going to talk about, they managed to start up the entire population in the USA to the point where I have some. I have a trio behind me, actually. Super cool species, my favorite of the crown giants, and they're an honest-to-God success story about a rare anole just thriving, you know. After they got into the right hands, they really just went boom, 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 boom in population, which is what I like to show off, because at the end of the day, they're super rare. Well, they're not super rare anymore, but they're definitely, most people don't know what they are still, so I think they still count for this video. But on top of that, they are definitely a success story, like I mentioned, and they're gonna definitely help give hope to the other anoles that we're going to talk about in this video, because they're so cool. I would say the next anole on here is actually one I really do enjoy, and it's disappointing to hear that they have not had a good run in captivity or really any long-term effects inside the captive care of keeping reptiles, to my knowledge, which is Anolis capito, which I'm pretty sure I'm saying that right, could be wrong. The name's right there, so if you want to be a grammar police, let me know in the comments. I like to learn. As you see, bright green, bright reds, and that's super sick, but most of them that we find tend to look like this. There's a lake in Nicaragua, which is where most of these real colorful individuals seem to be coming from, but Nicaragua seems to have a lower population, where Costa Rica seems to be the big place for the population numbers. So if we were going to get any, it would definitely be from Costa Rica, to be honest with you, but who knows if we'll even ever get them. But as you see, really sick anole. From everyone I've spoken to who's done research with them in the field, this species seems to be hang around more lower on the tree and will actually occasionally come down to hunt, which is really unique for anole. Anyways, let's go talk about the next anole. Now, next one is anole. I've definitely kept no secrets of how much I enjoy them, which is the banded tree anole. I've spoken about them here and there. I don't think they've ever been in a top 5 yet, but they've definitely been brought up in the update videos because I want to work with them badly. But the banded tree anole, you know, they're native to South America, and that's a pretty, you know, large land continent. And you're like, oh, what, just all? No, they're not. I'm sorry. Let me break it down to you. Banded tree anoles can be found in Venezuela, Ecuador, Peru, and Colombia, Brazil, and another place or two. But yeah, now you know where they come from. Let's talk about them more. But the banded tree anole is really interesting. This species is in the US hobby, the Canadian hobby. They're in every hobby around the world except Australia. Y'all can't get anything that is a native deal legally. Species pretty cool. Animal, if you're gonna go look for them in the wild, you're not gonna find them essentially on the edge of the forest right near the open fields that go into human settlement or anything else. You know, they're gonna be more so deep into the woods. That's why we don't know too much about them. They like to be somewhat lower down, which definitely makes it easier to find them, and hopefully we do more studies on them and learn more about them, so our success in captivity is a lot better, because this is how the story goes when we get them in captivity for 9 times out of 10. We get a large mass in, most die during transit because of the stress and just they're not built for this kind of stuff. Then people get them. Most people don't know anything about them because most information isn't just like that. You know, like I can find out 52 ways on why the crested gecko blinks its eye left and not right. But Lord have mercy if I want to find out the kind of foliage the banded tree anole might digest on occasion. But yeah, that'll tell you something about how much we know about them. So our main reason why they're not really established yet is simply because we don't know anything, but we have seen amazing work from my buddies here in Texas, being, you know, this guy and a couple other people around the USA and in Britain. You know, people are starting to have good success with them. So I genuinely believe by 2026, we're going to start seeing them pop up more CB specimens to the public. Me personally, I would like to start working with them at some time this year to talk about the next Anole. Now, Anolis fresher. I'm pretty sure I'm saying that right. I'm most certainly going to be wrong. It's on the screen, but I'm going to call them the Hipp Anole, which is their common name. So that's how they're going to be referred to the rest of this little part. So the Hipp Anole is a really unique anole. They are a crown giant anole, like Lutoglares. They're just not from Cuba. They're from this place. Pretty cool. But the Hipp Anole is really unique. From my understanding, there's pretty much nobody working with them in the USA. The only person who seems to be working with them is Germany. But I always like to go by the theory, if someone has one, there's probably 5 other people who are old, don't use social media or something, and they just have them. They don't post them. And I've learned this from experience. I've seen it with my own eyes. Because I know a Russian guy who breeds his false chameleons, right? He just has them. And he's been doing it for years because he just doesn't want to buy a new pet. You know, he just breeds them so he constantly has false chameleons as his pets, which is interesting. But, you know, you'll never hear about him because he isn't on social media. You see what I'm saying? These people exist, and we need to start realizing that. There's probably somebody who does have them. But back to the Anole. The Anole's pretty interesting. From everything I understand, they're surprisingly bold, which definitely comes to kudos to the crown giant factor, because larger Anoles tend to be more, you know, ready for anything to do with human interaction, or at least ready to tame down. Granted, that doesn't mean that they're like puppy dogs, but they're definitely a little bit more approachable. Unique Anoles, very bright, very colorful. They're definitely something I'm looking at. I think they might start getting a more established population later in years when they start having more success in Europe. There's more breeders besides the one guy, essentially. And they start to get shipped overseas to us, which happens. So give it a couple years and you'll probably start seeing them around here and there if you keep your eyes open. Anyways, let's talk about our last Anole. Real quick, please sub to the channel, leave a like, drop a comment, share it to all your friends, let them know, you know. I think I'm finally breaking into the YouTube For You page. I'd like to blow up pretty soon. I'd like to get monetized so I can start doing bigger stuff, you know. I went to Beaumont the other day and I could have went out herping and caught gators, but financially I couldn't afford to stay out there longer than a day. But if YouTube pays me, then I can do that. You see what I'm saying? Let's get me monetized. Now, let's go talk about the actual last place, which is Anolis Oxford, or the stream Anole. This is a pretty interesting Anole. Smaller Anole, sexable like this. You see this? Bigger dewlap, bright yellow, male. Smaller dewlap, female. You're like, oh, weird looking Anole. It looks very smooth. That's because this Anole is, well, aquatic. Now, this species, from my understanding, has never really been reproduced in captivity on a consistent basis. For example, they're a mainland Anole that does not thrive on a diet of what we typically feed in the hobby. So we're still figuring that out in all honesty, and it's basically all honesty. Still figuring that out, and honestly, most people have given up on trying to work with the species. Cameron, though, does not believe in that. I will eventually get my hands on them and try doing it myself. But the species is pretty unique. Be it the fact that they hunt, they do things in water, they do water stuff, which is pretty cool for the lizards. Downside of most lizards who do that, they're very big or very, very expensive. So for the average Joe, it's not exactly easy. So I want the smaller lizard that goes in water, so I can have more smaller lizard that goes in water. Really unique species, and they're definitely something I would like to look into more. From my understanding, though, they were in the hobby, mostly Germany, but most individuals did actually end up getting some sense of reproduction, but this species, from their understanding, does not live a long time. They say they'll typically last 3 to 6 years, but this is 3 to 6 years living in a captive environment where they most likely were originally wild caught, and then eating things that their body is not able to break down properly to the finest extent, which will cause issues down the road. So honestly, I'm expecting them to live a little bit longer than that, but only time will tell with more research and data. But they are definitely still being kept in very small populations. Here in my rant about the guys who just have animals and never post, that's the kind of people who are still working them in Germany. I've heard rumors about it, but the guys who've told me about it don't want to tell me who they are. So I can't give them a call and be like, hey, I breed Anoles, blah, blah, blah. I'd like to learn this from you. You see what I'm saying? You know, they are still being worked with, but they're not being worked with for, you know, me or you right there, Tammy, to buy them as a pet or reproduce them on your own. They're more so their own personal project, and that's how it's going to sadly be. Someone imports them. But I do believe, though, if we get them and we really work on the diet specifically and try to lean towards definitely keeping the fat extremely low and trying to get a more arthropod mixed into the diet if possible, which is definitely not impossible, it's just hard to do, then, sadly, only then, I think the species will be thriving in captivity. But only time will tell, and hopefully it goes well for somebody, and I don't even care if I get them first. You know, somebody should get them, and I hope we have some kind of success as a community, and we can learn, and boom, we have them around. Anyways, into the video. Let me know what you thought.